doing this for months already.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are on into the draft once again. Cloud9 starting off with this Glaive pick. They like this when they're on the A side.
Yeah, and typical Glaive first pick there. Lance is going to be taken away instead of first picking at Cath. So now they should ban Cath here unless they want to do a Cath-Lance combo that European teams have tried, such as G2, and had some success with. So let's see what Dynasty decides here. But I think a good ban will potentially be Vox or Dodgio. In this situation, potentially Vox might be better because Lance it's harder to land a route onto a Lance and a Dodgio.
Removing the Adagio from the equation on this one. Don't want to deal with old school. Well, that's going to be a crawl taken off the board as well. So now Dynasty have to decide where they want to go alongside this Lance pick.
Well, they knew where they wanted to go with this Lance pick, immediately locking in the Vox. No hesitation. And you got to wonder how much of that is them wanting the Vox versus just not wanting old school to have the Vox.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the picks and bans so far, it's very lane-oriented. We've got Adagio and Indris taken off the board with Vox locked in. It's kind of shoehorning old school into a very few select picks.
Yeah, I mean, they can do a CP carry. We haven't seen old school play CP carry such as Scarf or Celeste, for example. We know that Celeste is actually really popular with Glaive. If you think about Glaive with Catherine and Celeste, that's actually really, really strong. Or if they want to, you know, try something a little different, Jewel could work too, but I doubt that will come out.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be said, Celeste was one of the most popular picks yesterday. We have yet to see it at all in this series from either C picks or bans. So Catherine is going to be the lock-in. I'm curious to see whether something like a Celeste, like a Scarf, comes out in the lane.
Yeah, they've got a bit of time to discuss this one, talk it over, try and figure out where they feel will be their best opportunity to try and close this series out and get themselves into day number 3. That's what it's all about here today. Taking down your cross-regional rival and getting into the finals, and that's going to be Celeste.
That's a heavy CC comp, and with Cloud9, the way they execute and stuns and locks, oh my god, that is extremely scary for Dynasty.
Not only that, but the fact that Dynasty has struggled a little bit with the reflex blocks. Yeah. This is very, very scary. Dynasty is going to have to up their game when it comes to the reflex blocks and preventing that stun lockdown from happening.
Also, just up the timing in which they get the reflex blocks. We've seen in this series they like to delay that purchase quite significantly. Against a composition like this, you will be punished incredibly heavily if you try and pull that one off. And let's just bear in mind, Cloud9 are 2-1 up right now. Dynasty can't afford another loss. Look at this Riku Meza going with the Taka.
He says, you want to see some early game aggression, we need to try and fight often. Taka is a hero that will be looking to do just that.
And I mean, this is how you play into Celeste, right? You got to dive onto that backline.
Yeah, you do, but however, Cath with Glaive, 2 stuns, they can actually put this Taka out of commission and just lock him down and chain stun him. And he's a squishy, although he's great with burst damage, he's a very squishy assassin. So Riku has to time his Kaiten perfectly, because when he's mid-air, he can dodge all types of CC.
Yeah, it's going to be very important for him to play that exceptionally well. I mean, we've just been talking about how this is exactly right up Joseph's street. So I'm curious to see how Joseph is going to play around this Taka pick, because we mentioned it with the Koshko as well. He's played so much of it that he's going to know exactly how to play around it as well.
Yeah, he knows what he doesn't like to see. He knows how other people can try and play that hero or heroes against him. So now he's going to be able to be the one that tries to counter the Taka.
All right, so let's talk about this series from a top-down perspective right now. Cloud9, they've managed to get back on top of things, but Dynasty were the ones to take the first game in this series. Kind of surprised everybody here with that victory coming on through for them. And it was after they went down, I think it was 8-1 scoreline before they started to come back into the game. How do they make this game happen in a similar way? How do they take control of the series?
Dynasty needs to get Taka to level 6 and abuse that power spike like crazy to shut old school down and get Tricky ahead and then snowball from there. If they don't do that, they're going to lose this game. So adapt to the NA meta. You better show it today, Riku.
All right, well, we'll see whether Riku Meza is going to be able to kind of live up to that NA playstyle. It's time to get on into Game 4. We have Cloud9 going up against Dynasty Gaming. Let's get into it.
Well, Cloud9 sure have a draft with a whole bunch of lockdown. On the flip side, Dynasty, they've got a lot of firepower themselves. Is this a composition that can keep them in this tournament?
I think Suijay talked about it really nicely there. The European teams, from what we've seen, and even during this series from Dynasty, they have not done super well in the early game, and they haven't really abused power spikes well. In the first game, maybe so, but the last 2 games, no power spikes were being abused. They were too far behind in the early game. If you get behind in the early game here as Dynasty, you're done for. Literally donezo. There's no way of coming back into this game if you start to fall behind. Level 6, super important. Need to start abusing the ability to jump straight onto the Celeste with the X-Retsu. Kitans have to be perfectly timed. It's a very hard composition to pull off, but if they can do it, like they showed that they could yesterday, there is a chance.
Yeah, I think what's so scary about this composition for me is that, yes, it has immense damage, but there is so much stun potential. And if you do get comboed up, like our analysts were saying, like you were saying as well, it's just lights out. Like, how do you come back from that? Yeah,
we saw a lot of it yesterday, the Catherine Celeste combo, the sort of the stun into the core collapse, you've got the glaive afterburn as well, and a sort of team like C9 that's got this incredible synergy, almost like they play like a symphony when they're having a team fight. It is always going to get chained perfectly, you imagine, from these guys. So I think there's a big, big task for Dynasty to get over here. They need to be a super aggressive early game, abuse level 6 power spikes, snowball the game. Everything that EU doesn't do, EU has to do right now, right here, if they want to keep themselves in this series.
That's a pretty tall order, the way you put it right there. Dynasty, they are going to be bringing their A game here. I hope that they're hanging in there tough mentally after taking a couple of tough games from Cloud9 here.
I think if you are Dynasty, you look back, you draw on the fact that you have had one of the best international performances against a C9 team that any other team has had. You're on the likes of SK Gaming right now. You know that you've won a game against them. Draw back and say, hey, we have done some really good stuff this series. Let's not get tilted. We picked an aggressive, hard composition. We need to play into those win conditions. Like Suijay said, level 6 is very important. You need to run with that. They need to change things up. Exactly as Suijay said, they need to play like an NA team today in this series to keep themselves in it. Otherwise, you feel like C9 are just going to crush them like they would do with that team fight rolling machine.
Well, you play like NA, play like EU. They need to play like champions here.
Yeah.
That's what they need to do.
Absolutely. To beat C9, the current unified Western Live champions, you have to play like champions.
That's right.
Dynasty have shown us that they can do it. Dynasty have shown us that they can take a game from C9. Anything is possible if you can do that.
All right, well, it looks like we're going to have a moment before we actually hop into the game, so we'll go ahead and throw it back over to our analyst desk.
Thank you very much, guys, and you're absolutely right. They are going to have to play like absolute champions. Now, I want to kind of compare this draft that we have against the draft of Game 1, because it feels like a fairly similar situation where we have this Dynasty Gaming that they actually ran a more aggressive comp than you're expecting, but they still won it towards the later stages of the game. How are we expecting them to play this one out? Like, is this a matter of just trying to wave clear and protect Turret 1? Because that's what this series has felt like it's revolved around.
That's what it's felt like, but I don't think they can afford to do that this game. They don't have a composition that is going to scale up the way that they did previously. And with the Taka, Suijay mentioned it, you have to be so aggressive early on. You have to be the first one to level 6, and you are not going to be the first to level 6 if you are just playing that, okay, just protect the turret, give up a kill or 2 in the jungle if we have to. That's not going to cut it here.
All right, what are you expecting here, Suijay? Just got to be more aggressive here?
Yeah, I mean, Lance is really strong with Taka. If Taka gets armor, tier 1 armor, he can actually out-damage a glaive and absorb the damage because of that item build. So I'd love to see them kind of pull that kind of NA-EA strategy and just snowball Joseph, because once Taka gets ahead of glaive, he can actually do really well and steal the farm once he has a Storm Guard, and then rush a Shatterglass. I do not want to see Aftershock. You want to go straight Shatterglass, Broken Myth. You want to get as much damage, crystal damage, onto the Celeste as much as possible and force her to buy defense so she cannot get her damage power spike items.
All right, well, we do have a little bit of an instant replay of our draft coming up here, so we can talk about it in a little bit more depth. Now, I want to talk a bit about the glaive pick that we've seen coming on in, because different teams seem to have different levels of priority on this, and Cloud9 is a team, especially on this A side of the draft, that absolutely loves to pick up this glaive pick. What is it about this that makes it so valuable that you can first pick it? Because it's not something we saw first picked in the regular season.
Glaive is such a good flex pick. He can be a great captain, and we see Hammers play it so well against Immortals yesterday. He's also great as a jungler. He's actually one of the top junglers right now if Crow is taken away, because he offers that afterburn displacement along with the triple CC, like with the Grace, Catherine, and a Celeste. That's an extremely strong mid-game to late-game composition. So there's so much CC that Dynasty needs to block it, and I hope Tricky gets reflex blocks. This team needs to get a reflex block earlier, because last game against Akashka, that was kind of disappointing.
And I want to talk about that topic a little bit more as well, the reflex box, because it's also something on kind of Mowgli's shoulders, like getting that early crucible so that you can be the reflex block for your team. Now, it's Mowgli versus Gabe Bizzle here. Both of them absolute veterans in the captain role, absolute veterans of the Vainglory esports scene in general. How does that matchup play out in your head? Is this down to mechanics, or is this more down to the actual leadership of these players?
It's going to be mechanics, I think, primarily in this particular matchup because of these drafts, because there's so much to do with the lockdown potential. I mean, all three of the stuns that are coming up from Cloud9 are pre-level 6, which makes those reflex blocks all the more important to be prioritized. And you're going to need more than just the one reflex block for a carry. You're going to need that crucible to be used, and you have to make the decision of which of those stuns do you prioritize blocking. Which one do you allow the carry to block? Which one does the captain block? There's going to be so much mechanical skill involved in these situations.
Yeah, and not just mechanical skill, communication as well.
For me, it's atomization for Dynasty. I mean, I hope Vox gets a tension bow and Ataka gets a straight shatter glass, because Celeste has the second lowest health in the entire game. She's extremely squishy, so he needs to get tension bow and abuse it with a tension bow poison shift kind of build.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about Celeste as well, because this is a pick that was huge yesterday. It's the first time we're seeing it in this series, but we saw it have different levels of success across the course of yesterday. What makes a good Celeste player? How do you really abuse this pick?
Positioning is integral to a Celeste. Being able to stay far enough away from the fight that you are not going to be the priority target, but close enough that you can keep dropping damage in, and then being able to throw those Solar Storms and hit multiple targets. The best Celeste hit either multiple targets with the Solar Storm or hit almost all of the stars onto one target with it. If you just clip one target with 2 or 3 of the stars on the edge, you're not getting anywhere near the amount of value out of that ultimate as the best players are.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to take this conversation towards the conversation of NA versus EU. Now, we started the entire day with a vote. It was 84% in favor of NA from you guys at home. But, well, the crowd clearly agrees with that one. But the thing is, Dynasty was not a team we were expecting to be coming and swinging. They're against Cloud9, right? The defending champions. You expect Cloud9 to be a heavy favorite. And with Dynasty taking game in this series, it starts to kind of throw that vote a little bit up in the air. The line, the gap between these two regions seems to be shrinking to me if this is the result of the first series of the day. And when you look towards the teams like Fnatic, like SK Gaming, you have to think that maybe they actually have a pretty significant chance later on today.
Yeah, every win an EU team gets, that gives them momentum. When Tricky was talking on Twitter, all the other EU players quoted Dragonborn's tweet and gave them the IGN to get the ice reward that Dragonborn put. So every single EU person, every win they get, if let's say today Dynasty falls, but Fnatic wins or SK gets games, that's going to give them momentum, and they need that as a region right now.
Yeah, and I mean, when we look at the teams like Fnatic, like SK Gaming, they're the hopes for the European region. It's like Dynasty, they're kind of just setting up this pedestal for their comrades from Europe, but also Dynasty, they've been looking amazing themselves. It's not like their goal is not to set the pedestal. Their goal is to take this series, don't get me wrong. But certainly, Fnatic against Nova and then SK later on going up against Immortals, those are going to be some incredible matchups, and I'm curious to see how we see those playstyles develop as well, because this was not the same playstyle from Dynasty that we're used to seeing in the regular season.
And not only that, but this is a situation where if you look at Europe standings, SK and Fnatic, they performed.
I'm going to interrupt you there. It's time to get back into this game, so we're going to cut that conversation short. Take it away, guys.
Well, looks like we're ready to get back into the game here pretty quickly. I'm sure all of the players are as well.
We're in spooky mode right now.
Yeah, it's scary sometimes hanging out with you up here.
Oh, wow,
the lights go out.
That's a bit harsh.
All right, guys, well, we are ready to get into the game. Let's see if Cloud9 can close this one out, or Dynasty can find another win here and push us into the next game in this series. We are into the fold. Rikumez on the talk. This is something that I actually find this as the most interesting pick here in this game.
Absolutely. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. Rikumez did find a win with it yesterday. Mowgli going to be starting to put pressure on with Old School, and Gabe Bizzle walking into the Dynasty Gaming jungle, looking to put pressure early onto these players and Mowgli doing his best here to steal that away, but it won't. It'll go over to Old School. So
yeah, I really like the fact that it was Old School that rotated over here. He did a really good job there to secure that front camp. It's going to allow him a lot of extra leeway. Now, the Helios come down as well as the stun. Tricky taking a whole bunch of damage. You see the basics, the Helios, the nice stutter stepping, moving forward, and a great job by C9. A first blood here in the first minute.
Every single time this has happened from C9 and they've invaded the jungle, Tricky has pushed up and disrespected to rotate out of the jungle and often gets caught out. Happened with the Ringo, now happened with the Vox as well. Needs to be super aware of the positioning of C9 because right now Dynasty don't seem to be on that same page. Mowgli didn't manage to land the impales there. Mowgli was very impactful on his Glaive game.
Oh, afterburn, Rico Meza back to Kaku, but to find the stun, the Dragon Blood contract is applied. Rico Meza trying to get out with that movement speed, but I don't think so. 2 kills now for Cloud9.
Not a good start for Dynasty. We said they needed to snowball the early game. They needed to get towards that level 6 on the Taka as quickly as possible, and suddenly things are looking a bit bleaker for them. It's not over. Obviously, only 1,000 gold right now from those first 2 kills, but it's not a good pedestal like the team. The desk was talking about pedestals for the European teams. I think they needed a pedestal in this game and seems to be taken right out from under them as C9 already start up what we know they can do, crushing their opposition.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a very quick net worth advantage being built up here. It's coming off of the back of the rotations from C9 and the reaction to those rotations from Dynasty. So if Dynasty can maybe kind of tighten up their reactions, I think they can kind of stall out the aggression here, but they're going to have to make some changes.
Mowgli was very influential on his Lance pick in the first game. Really influential, a key part of the win, you feel, for the Dynasty Gaming roster. He's on it again. How much influence can he have here? Those big multi-man impales are going to be so important to setting the scene for Rico Meza to try and find those executes. But you can see Rico Meza here. Maybe a little bit bashful. They want to stay away from the C9 roster right now. Don't want to get locked into a big old engage at this point where that power glaive is going to have a bit of pressure.
Yeah, Old School taking a whole bunch of damage. Mowgli with a nice Githian wall. Old School getting lit up, and there you go. A nice kill. Actually credited to Mowgli there. Maybe they wanted to put it on a carrier or jungler, but that's just fine for Dynasty. They get themselves on the board. Kaku moving forward. Rico Meza looking for a target. He just wants to get that attack, get that move speed, get that passive procced off, but they're going to just draw it back, take the Elder Tree in.
Tricky did a really good job there. Almost felt like he was herding animals. They herded C9 into
little sheepdog there.
Herded C9 into that corridor to allow Mowgli to set up the impale. Really nicely played from Tricky to force Old School into that position, and they capitalized on it.
Is there a worse feeling than when you're clumped up as your team in a choke point like that? And Lance just comes in with an impale. You're like, okay, the Githian wall is going to hit as well.
I don't think so. Maybe one of the worst feelings in the game when you get multi-man impales or multi-man Githian walls because it's just in that perfect position for the Lance. Tricky heads back into lane here.
Yeah, stun from Gabe Fizzle, core collapse, Lance as well, Dragon Blood contract, procced off. Tricky's got to get back. Almost going down. Mowgli buying just enough time to keep his carry alive.
Tricky has not yet shopped, by the way, sitting on 2,000 gold. So the back timing's not quite there for Dynasty. As you can see, Old School's picked up that energy battery. Where
Impale, but Gabe Fizzle moving forward, has the stun. Just a stack on the front. No, they followed up with the core collapse. They've got the stun. Afterburn back on the Tricky. Cloud9 are going to take 2 off of this one. Almost too easy as they stack up 2 more kills, putting themselves up 4-1.
And Rico Meza doing his best to clear waves, but again, the wave clear that was so good.
Go back into the core collapse. Predicted. Old School, he's in the zone.
He's definitely in the zone on this Celeste right now. Tricky again, Poison Shiv, immediate first buy, but he was just way behind in items because he hadn't backed earlier on. Maybe could have backed a bit earlier, picked up the things like the Blazing Salvo, picked up the healing regeneration as well from the upgrading the Bicular Eulogies. I just think maybe punished a bit there for it, but Rico Meza is doing his best to do some aggressive counter jungling.
Now, does Tricky have to pick up a reflex block as his next item, in your opinion?
Yeah. No, he needs a reflex block very, very soon. You can see he's already picked up the Oak Heart there, working towards it. He's not going to neglect the need to sort of stop these stuns coming out from C9 this time round, and that's probably lessons learned from the previous games. Really like this from Tricky. He's going to back off now. Has the gold to complete. I imagine that's where he'll do it.
All right, he's back to base. He's going to pick up that reflex block. A nice call out there by a Scoundrel. Now, Rico Meza, Mowgli, down in the jungle. They cleared out their rotation. I'm waiting to see what this Taka is going to do. He's got his ultimate ready to go. The X-Retsu, he can close that gap. He can get in onto the Celeste and look to apply that burst damage.
So you've got the Poison Shiv item spike. The fountain is there. The stage is set for Dynasty Gaming to use this level 6 on the Taka. They just need to execute. This is a good opportunity.
Core collapse. Afterburn! reflex block, not even enough. There's the fountain keeping Tricky alive. The Sonic Zoom back under the turret. They're going to be able to take Joseph down. A nice kite over the top side. Riku Meza abusing the movement speed. Another stun. Helio stacking up the basic attacks following him for days, and he goes down. Celeste basic attack. You cannot run away from that. And Old School finding another kill. He's having a great game. 3-1, 6 minutes in on the Celeste.
Oh, he's already starting to rocket out here. And again, I think Riku Meza was very pent up on trying to punish out of Joseph taking the turret aggro, but they left Celeste, the big damage dealer, Eve of Harvest first as well, to give the energy regeneration and the ability to spam these abilities, spam those stars, spam the core collapses without going out of energy too quickly, and provides the potential burst healing necessary to survive the Taka, which I think is often why you see some Celestes pick up something like an Eve of Harvest first when they're dealing with a lot of burst damage. They just try and say, well, if I can land a good ultimate, I can land a supernova in the correct position, the healing that I get from it might be enough.
Afterburn, reflex block, a little bit late. Tricky, able to dodge the core collapse coming out there and the damage from Old School. As such a dangerous situation to be in.
Mowgli here, just moving in, going to go towards the Crucible, absolutely necessary as well. The more reflex blocks, the better here.
Kaku, but
Dynasty.
The flares are out. These flares from Gabe are insane. He knows that they just have to keep vision on this Taka so they can't be caught by surprise, and he's doing a phenomenal job.
Tricky's back into lane here. Bit of damage going down onto the turret once. C9 get level 8 on Old School. Their tower siege potential will be very, very high. Riku Meza will get spotted out by Gabe Bizzle. He's completely isolated from his team here, and he's going to head towards the backs.
This is going to be Riku Meza just trying to take some backs. He's stunned up. He was able to get the back healing camp there. Dragon Blood contract is down, and just should be a matter of time before they're able to chop Riku Meza down. X-Retsu actually over the wall. A Solar Storm, a wild Solar Storm, kiting back over the top. Riku Meza buying time. Kaku, he's a wily little Taka, isn't he?
He absolutely
there's
is.
the afterburn from Joseph. He's found, and Riku Meza staying alive. He wasted a whole bunch of time here.
And the kill goes over to Gabe Bizzle as well. And that bought time for Tricky and Mowgli to pressure Old School, get some pressure onto this turret, and Riku Meza here has done a good service for Dynasty. Sort of stalled out for like almost a minute, and again, the more minutes that you can stall out against C9 seems to be the better.
Afterburn, nice reflex from Tricky. Joseph's in deep core collapse, trying to come out onto Mowgli. Mowgli taking a whole bunch of damage, but he's just fine. He's a Lance, he's holding his fountain and a reflex.
And we're working towards the Aftershock here on Riku Meza as well. The Stormcrown Aftershock spike is not too far away for him, and will give him the burst damage necessary to threaten Old School, but in classic C9 fashion, they are never neglecting defense, and already shielding starts to open up here for Old School. He's got the Frostburn as well, so teamfight control starts to open up. It means that, let's look at it this way. If Riku Meza goes in, uses his X-Retsu onto Old School, he is isolated. Now you want Tricky and Mowgli to be able to follow up. If Old School uses that Heliogenesis to slow down Tricky and Mowgli with the Frostburn, the follow-up on the Taka is going to be limited and slower, meaning that maybe they could focus Taka more effectively, keeping Old School alive.
Yeah, and it also means that Riku Meza is going to have to be almost flawless when he moves in for those executions with the chitin over the top.
Yeah, so again, like we said, we talk about ease of execution when it comes to certain compositions in Vainglory, and the composition that Dynasty have brought to the table definitely is not an easy one to execute. It's not an easy one to execute on C9's side of the table as well, but again, a lot of it is chain CC, which is sometimes self-explanatory. You just need the mechanics to do it, and we know that the C9 composition do.
I really like that Gabe went for the contraption here. He did have the flare gun, and he had a whole stack of flares, and he's been flaring like crazy. Now he's got the contraption, he's dropping the scout traps, and he has flares in his inventory most of the time.
Level 8 on Old School, the range advantage now opens up for C9. The siege potential is there, and you can see that they're going to try and capitalize on it with a push through this lane. Riku Meza not there to defend just yet. It's going to give a bit of time for C9 to put pressure on this turret.
Riku Meza moving up. They should know he's there. Well, actually, it's Kaku from range. The 2-minute
nail.
Wait for it, lands. X-Retsu went over the top. Old School taking a lot of damage. They dodge out the core collapse. Tricky doesn't get after, but back he's crit down. Huge damage coming out here. Now moving back, they actually just take him down with the Helio. Mowgli, he's going to be the last one to go down for Dynasty as Cloud9 pick Dynasty apart here, taking a clean ace. They'll take the turret as well as Scoundrel and pretty much whatever they want on the map.
It was a good move, a good engage from Dynasty, but it just feels like they weren't capitalizing early enough here. Again, that Frostburn did limit Tricky's ability to follow up on the Rickameza engage. Tricky was then held up by Joseph. The CC started coming through, and Old School was able to kite backwards. The damage from Rickameza just not enough. Let's have a look at the replay here. Mowgli starts this off so well. It's comboed with the silence so nicely. The stun actually comes out from Gabe Vizzle, which was super influential, and that combos with then Old School using the slowing of the Heliogenesis and the Frostburn to stop Tricky actually getting there to capitalize on that engage. And then obviously, when you have Eve of Harvest, one of the major things that SLS can do to survive a fight is find a really hard-hitting ultimate, because you get a huge amount of regeneration from it because of the Eve of Harvest, and he did a really good job there and got the double whammy of taking out Tricky at the same time.
I'm really impressed with Joseph there in that last engagement. And here he is once again, Tricky with the reflex, able to move back. Rickameza, he's in deep onto the Celeste, the wait for it, coming through. Tricky maybe in position this time to find a bit of damage. Old School kiting back. Rickameza dropping down, still alive. There you go, have the damage. Joseph able to get it. Tricky back after burning the double kill. Coming through for your Glaive. Joseph coming online. He's on fire. Mowgli moving back to Helio. They chop him down. Triple kill. I love Joseph is here to play.
Unbelievable from C9. They are absolutely not messing around anymore. North America was slighted at losing a game to the European squad.
I think so.
And they don't mean to lose another one. And when you've got a Taka is one of the worst heroes to play from behind. There's no way it feels rewarding to play as a Taka when you're super behind, because you just jump in, your damage isn't there, you're dealt with really easily, and Taka doesn't really have another mode. Taka doesn't have something else, he doesn't have utility, he has just pure damage. And when you're behind, that pure damage doesn't feel like it's having an impact, and I'm sure Rickameza feels that right now. I think, realistically, you've got to say that Gabe Vizzle may be understated on this Catherine. Sometimes people say it's really easy to play Catherine, you point, click, and stun, but some of his stuns have been so influential in these teamfights. He stopped Rickameza from capitalizing on that Githian wall by stunning him before he went into the X-Retsu, meaning he couldn't jump onto Old School. He couldn't take Old School out and capitalize off the Githian wall from Mowgli. I think Gabe Vizzle been playing an incredible game on Catherine. The stuns have been so influential in these teamfights to stop certain aspects of that Dynasty composition working.
I mean, we talk about the mechanical abilities of Gabe Vizzle to actually be landing these stuns, the blast trimmers as well, but I really want to go back to his itemization. I love the contraption coming out here as a second item. He held the flare gun with a full stack of flares, and in that major power spike we were talking about coming out of Dynasty, Rickameza really wasn't ever able to catch them by surprise. There were 3 flares down in the lane at times.
Oh, absolutely. I think you really hit a good nail on the head here in the sense that Taka really excels, a bit like CP Kestra, when she is, or when he is in an area where he's not being sort of monitored. He's coming from an area where you're not quite sure where he's going to be. X-Retsu can come from any place at any time with the stealth, but Gabe Vizzle's second item, Contraption, it's probably the best item you can pick up against the likes of a CP Kestrel or a Taka, because it keeps tabs on the map so well. So as long as Old School is positioning around these areas that you've got flared or scout traps, he's never going to get taken by surprise. And that actually cuts one of Taka's main elements from his kit. Taka is supposed to have an element of surprise, and Contraption shuts that down. So Gabe Vizzle, obviously itemizing, as you would expect, perfectly in the situation.
And you know, it's twofold, right? It's great against the Taka, but it's actually a great item for the Catherine.
Oh yeah, cooldown reduction, Catherine works so well with it. You know, more stuns, more Storm Guard, more Blast Tremor.
More deliciousness. Cloud9 looking to put the nail in the coffin here for Dynasty and take these guys out of this championship. We'll see if Dynasty can hang in there. We're back in the game. Cloud9 up 12-1, 12 minutes in.
3-item spike here for Old School. The Broken Myth online now. Suddenly the damage is going to be ramping up. The healing is going to be ramping up. And, you know, Tricky wants to get those Poison Shiv procs onto Old School specifically so that he doesn't heal up as effectively through the Fountain or through the Eve of Harvest. And again, like we've said, Tricky's having a very tough time following up Rickameza in these fights, in part due to Gabe Vizzle, in part due to Old School, and also in part due to that Frostburn.
Stun on a Tricky. Afterburn back. He's taking a lot of damage. Tricky with the reposition. Rickameza in and out, fighting around the cooldown. They block off the Blast Tremor. Solar Storm a little bit off the mark. Joseph taking a whole bunch of damage. Can they get in there? Tricky. He's got 12 breaking point stacks. Gabe Vizzle dropping low. He's pretty low on energy as well, but those Helios are threatening. X-Retsu kind of on top. He almost got it. Can he take the bleed damage? Mowgli with the Afterburn almost going down. Tricky's able to get Joseph. This is just on a knife's edge. Mowgli thinking about porting. Tricky hanging around. All the breaking point stacks have dropped off. Gabe Vizzle, Dragon Blade contract. Mowgli, he's in and out of the fight. Old School back in. Tricky's there. Mowgli goes down. Tricky, stunned up on his right. Double kill. Old School. See C9 are doing it.
And Gabe Bizzle's stun again, shutting down Dynasty at the very edge of success. Rick and Meza started it off, Dynasty weren't on the same page, and suddenly C9 shut them down once more. We're going to get another replay of this. We're going to have a look exactly what happened. The initial engage is Tricky using an incredible reflex block to position so effectively in the backline. The silence was a multi-man silence. You can't get much better than that. He dodges the ultimate, and again, this is all about Tricky's positioning, while both Mowgli and Rikameza is providing that nuisance distraction on the front line. All of this was the Tricky show until Rikameza decides to dive by himself, doesn't get the kill, and suddenly the turnaround moment starts to come for C9. It gives the time for Old School to back off and get that healing tree on, come back, and be an impact in the fight.
I have to imagine that Rikameza didn't think that was a maybe. He definitely had the idea that I'm going in, I'm a heat-seeking missile, and I'm going to take the Celeste out. Well, Dynasty, they're able to take down the turret, but C9, they've caught them here. Mowgli stunned up. He's holding a Fountain and a Crucible. Moving forward to combat roll, buying a bit of time. The Crucible, the Fountain is out. Rikameza, he's on to Joseph. Joseph not taking the damage, but Tricky sure is. Tricky blown up. Now Dynasty on the run. Can they find their way out of here? C9 on the chase. They want to find one kill more at least, and they've got it. A double kill for Joseph. This guy is just blowing them up. 8-1-6 now on this glaive. He's a monster.
Joseph is one of the pure carry junglers that North America has to offer, and again, on this glaive, Weapon Power has been such an influential player for C9. Everybody from C9, we talk about each individual prowess of these members, but everybody from C9 is playing a ridiculously good game here. And they're going to go and take the Kraken as well. An easy Kraken, uncontested, and opens up another advantage for C9.
So, I mean, one thing when you have a Celeste on your team, it gives you a bit of vision. You can drop Helio into the brush, that's great.
Absolutely.
But the fact that Cloud9 have gone all into the vision with the early contraption out of Gabe Bizzle, look at the vision across this map. There's nowhere that Rikameza can actually find a nice angle in onto their team.
Here we go, Mowgli goes in.
Mowgli, the impale, they're rooted to stun onto the Celeste. They're trying to find the damage with the Solar Storm and the Eve, keeping him alive. Tricky, he's in too deep. They have the damage of Afterburn on Rikameza. He's down. Dynasty Gaming are crumbling. Cloud9, they're doing it. Another ace, putting them up 20-2, moving in. If they play this Riding Scoundrel, they could be ending the game right now.
Oh, C9, we have missed you on the international stage, and you do not disappoint when it matters most. Decisive, influential, they get the win, and C9 3-1 Dynasty Gaming.
Cloud9. Very few people across the world doubted that Cloud9 would be taking